I must remain anonymous, too many would recognize me, and a single scandal could destroy everything I've built. For now, call me Jessica. My life is under constant scrutiny. Every step I take is recorded, dissected, and distorted by the media. Rumors flourish, and tabloid headlines reinvent the truth about who I really am. It was late at night when I was poring over preparations for an upcoming event that my phone suddenly buzzed. The caller ID was hidden. My initial instinct was to ignore it, but an inexplicable urge made me answer. On the line, a voice smooth, assured, and laced with menace, spoke. "I have some very compromising photos of you, intimate ones." My pulse raced. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask, struggling to process the words before the voice pressed on. "You have one option. Deliver $50,000 by Friday, or I'll make sure these images see the light of day." The shock hit me like a freight train. My throat tightened as my mind scrambled for answers. "How did you even get them?" I demanded. "Check your cloud storage," came the curt reply, followed by a sudden click of disconnection. I was plunged into a silence so oppressive it felt almost physical. With trembling fingers, I accessed my cloud storage, and there they were, snapshots of my most vulnerable moments, never meant for public eyes. The realization that these images could obliterate not only my career but my entire existence was paralyzing. A whirlwind of questions swirled through my mind. Who was this stranger? How had he infiltrated my digital life? What could I possibly do? Involving the authorities was unthinkable. It would only fan the flames of the scandal. I couldn't risk confiding in anyone close. Betrayal and judgment were too real. Amidst the panic, one name emerged in my thoughts: Bradley. Bradley isn't related to me by blood, but he has long been my trusted advisor and business partner. Influential and resourceful, he commands attention the moment he enters a room. His extensive network and sharp intuition have resolved crises that once seemed unsolvable. Though our personal connection isn't deep, his reputation as a man who always delivers precedes him. If there was anyone who could pull me out of this nightmare, it was Bradley. Despite the risks of diving into unknown territory, I realized I had no alternative but to seek his help. Recalling that he typically burned the midnight oil in his private study, I made my way to his office. My heart pounded with apprehension as I navigated the dimly lit corridor, each step echoing my inner turmoil. Pausing at a polished brass door, I hesitated briefly before summoning the courage to push it open. I awoke the next day with a restless mind and a heavy heart. The haunting words from last night, the cryptic promise from Bradley, and the chilling text, "Hold tight, Jessica. I'm in control," echoed in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was caught in a trap far deeper than I'd ever imagined. Every minute of that morning felt like an eternity, punctuated by anxious glances at my phone and a desperate need to understand what I had just signed up for. Throughout the day, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy at my public engagements and meetings. My schedule was jam-packed with back-to-back appointments, but my mind was miles away. Every unfamiliar email and every sudden phone call sent a shiver down my spine. I meticulously recorded every unusual detail in a journal, every shadow of a doubt, every inexplicable whisper of my name over the phone. Then, as dusk fell, my phone rang once more from an unknown number. Though my instinct screamed to ignore it, I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" I asked, voice tentative. After a brief pause, a calm yet mysterious tone replied, "Jessica, it's me. I have an update." There was no name, just the promise of information. The voice continued, "Meet me at the Little Oak CAF, on the edge of town, in about an hour." I can't say more on the phone. Intrigued and frightened, I knew I had little choice. If I were to break free from this web, I needed more answers. I arrived at the CAF a few minutes early. The place was quiet and unassuming, a perfect spot for a discreet exchange. I scanned the room until I noticed a man in a tailored suit sitting in a corner booth, his eyes discreetly observing the room. He gestured me over with a subtle nod. "Jessica," he said softly as I approached. "Yes, that's me," I replied, barely able to mask the tension in my voice. "Call me Mark," he introduced himself with a measured tone. "I understand you're in some trouble." I took a deep breath and began. "Someone has threatened to expose me unless I pay a large sum. I reached out to Bradley for help, and now I feel I'm caught in a trap. I need to know who's behind this and what I'm really up against." Mark leaned in closer. "I've been investigating cases like yours for a while now," he confided. There's an underground network specializing in digital extortion, skilled hackers who infiltrate the cloud storage of high-profile individuals. They gather compromising material and then use it as leverage. His words sent a chill down my spine. "And you believe this is connected to them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's more complicated," Mark replied. "There's someone orchestrating these threats on behalf of that syndicate, and his actions are intertwined with Bradley's involvement. I can't disclose everything just yet, but I can help you dig deeper if you're willing to take this risk." A mixture of hope and dread surged through me. "I don't really have a choice, do I?" I murmured. Mark's eyes were earnest. "Sometimes, the only way out of a trap is to confront it head-on. But be warned, the path ahead is treacherous, and you might uncover more than you bargained for." Returning to my apartment, I felt a profound isolation. The corridors of my building, normally familiar and secure, now seemed filled with unseen eyes. I began to notice every shadow, every quiet footstep echoing in the night. I kept rereading Mark's cryptic messages and Bradley's ominous words, trying to decipher their hidden meanings. That evening, as rain pounded against my window, I received a new message from Bradley. "Jessica, I trust you are following my advice. There is much more at stake than you realize." The message came with an encrypted file that I couldn't open without assistance, and its foreboding tone left me with a deep sense of unease. During a subsequent meeting at a discreet location, I finally asked Mark the question that had been gnawing at me. "What do you think Bradley expects in return for his help?" I inquired. "I feel like I'm now indebted to him in ways I never anticipated." Mark sighed, his expression tinged with sympathy. "Bradley isn't just a problem solver, he has his own agenda. I suspect he's using you as leverage in a larger scheme. His reputation for taking calculated risks and manipulating situations is well known. You need to be cautious. In this game, trust is dangerous, and alliances are rarely what they seem." Every word from Mark stung like a warning bell. I couldn't help but recall our earlier conversation in Bradley's office, his cold promise echoing in my ears that I owed him, not just in money but in something far more intangible. His warning that when the time comes, I will call in my favor haunted me relentlessly. Later that night, I resolved to confront Bradley directly. The building was nearly empty, the silence amplifying every footstep as I made my way to his office. With trembling hands, I pushed open the heavy door to his study. Bradley sat there, bathed in the glow of a solitary desk lamp, his gaze inscrutable as he looked up. "Bradley," I began, trying to steady my voice, "I need to know, what exactly is it that you want from me?" He regarded me quietly for a long moment before speaking. "Jessica, you knew from the start that nothing in this world comes without a cost. I resolved your immediate crisis, but you must understand, this is merely the beginning." His tone was flat, his eyes dark and unyielding. I pressed on, voice rising with a mix of anger and desperation. "I'm trapped in a nightmare of extortion and deceit. I trusted you to help me, but now I'm drowning in debts I never agreed to pay. Why did you take my case, and what is it that you truly want?" Bradley's face remained impassive. After a long, tense silence, he spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I did what was necessary to protect you, Jessica. But you must remember, I have my own interests at heart. You owe me, and when the time comes, I expect you to fulfill that obligation. The specifics are not as important as the understanding that nothing in our world is free." A cold shiver ran through me. "And if I can't meet your demands?" I whispered, the weight of his words almost unbearable. His eyes bore into mine as he answered, "Then the consequences will be severe. Not only for you, but for those around you. Consider this a warning." I left Bradley's office with a heart heavy with dread and a mind racing with questions. The city outside, with its neon glow and shadowed alleys, now appeared as a labyrinth of hidden threats. I realized that my life had become a chessboard, and I was just one piece in a dangerous game where every move counted. Over the next few days, I tried to piece together the clues left by Mark's investigation and Bradley's cryptic threats. Every new revelation deepened the mystery. The digital extortion was merely the surface of a vast, underground network of corruption, greed, and power. I began to understand that I was entangled in a plot much larger than I could have ever imagined. I documented every encounter, every strange call, and every unexpected message. The pressure was mounting. I couldn't help but feel that each step I took brought me closer to an inescapable reckoning. The relentless anxiety of living under constant surveillance, coupled with the fear of being used as a pawn, was overwhelming. Every night, I lay awake, haunted by the thought that at any moment everything could collapse. One particularly stormy evening, as I sat by the window watching the rain blur the city lights, I received a final message from Mark. "Prepare yourself, Jessica. The real game is about to begin." Those words resonated like a forewarning, and I knew that the calm I had managed to muster was only an illusion. The coming days promised not only more danger but a confrontation with forces that had already begun to shape my destiny. In that moment of solitude, I wrestled with a growing realization. The only way to escape this peril was to face it head-on, to unravel the tangled web of betrayal and manipulation that had ensnared me. But with every new clue, the stakes grew higher. I questioned whether the cost of freedom was one I could bear, or if the price of trust would ultimately leave me with nothing. As I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, I resolved to confront my demons and uncover the truth behind Bradley's inscrutable promises and the shadowy network that had invaded my life. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: I could no longer run from the darkness that lurked at every turn. In the days that followed, the pressure mounted relentlessly. Every moment was a reminder of the dangerous web I'd been forced into, and I felt the walls closing in as secrets and hidden agendas surfaced one after another. I spent sleepless nights poring over every message, every call, desperate to find a clue that might free me from Bradley's stranglehold and the mysterious extortion network. The uncertainty gnawed at me. Each shadow on the wall seemed to whisper betrayal. I began noticing subtle changes in my daily routine. The familiar faces on the street and in the office took on an ominous air, as if everyone knew something I did not. I tried to confide in a trusted colleague about the mounting threat, but the fear of repercussions kept my words muted. Instead, I turned to Mark for further guidance, meeting him at a discreet location away from prying eyes. Over coffee in a dim, quiet backroom, he laid out what he'd uncovered so far: a labyrinthine network of digital predators, where a single misstep could cost me everything. His tone was grave as he explained that Bradley's involvement was far more complex than I had imagined. "Bradley is not acting alone," Mark confided, his eyes dark with concern. "He's deeply entangled with powerful figures who profit from control and manipulation. The extortion threat you face is merely the tip of an iceberg that spans industries and reaches into the highest echelons of power." His words echoed in my mind long after we parted ways. The realization that my personal crisis might be just a small part of a larger, more insidious game was almost too much to bear. Determined to reclaim some semblance of control, I decided it was time to confront Bradley again. I arranged a meeting in a neutral location, a quiet hotel lounge far from the familiar corridors of his office. When he arrived, Bradley's demeanor was as composed as ever, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that belied his calm exterior. "Jessica," he began, his voice measured and cold, "you seem troubled. I trust you've been following the instructions I gave you." His words were laced with the certainty of someone who believed he held all the cards. "I've been following them," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I need answers. Your involvement, your silence on the full picture, what exactly am I paying for?" I demanded, the frustration and desperation evident in every word. Bradley's eyes narrowed slightly. "You must understand, nothing in our world is free. I intervened to neutralize the immediate threat, but I cannot risk exposing details that would compromise us both. Consider this the cost of your safety." His reply was vague, yet it sent a chill through me. I realized then that his help was not born of benevolence but of self-interest, a calculated maneuver to secure his own position. The conversation turned tense as I pressed further. "You expect me to remain silent, to owe you favors I can't even imagine repaying. How can I trust you when your silence speaks louder than your words?" I challenged, my pulse racing as I demanded clarity in the midst of ambiguity. For a long moment, Bradley said nothing, his face inscrutable. Finally, he spoke in a tone that was almost sympathetic. "Trust is a luxury we cannot afford, Jessica. You knew the risks when you stepped into this world. My actions ensured that your secrets and your reputation remain intact. In return, you must acknowledge that our alliance is now binding. When the time comes, I will call upon you, and you will honor that debt." His words, though measured, left a lingering taste of inevitability. I felt trapped, caught between the necessity of his intervention and the moral cost of surrendering my autonomy. As I left the meeting, the weight of his demands bore down on me, and I couldn't shake the image of his cold, unyielding gaze. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights blurred by a relentless rain, I mulled over my next move. The dual threats of the extortion network and Bradley's ominous promise left me questioning every step I had taken. Was it possible that by seeking help, I had merely exchanged one form of imprisonment for another? The fear of losing everything, my career, my freedom, my very identity, pushed me to consider drastic measures. I began discreetly gathering evidence, piecing together every digital footprint and every coded message that might expose the larger network at work. With Mark's assistance, I delved deeper into the labyrinth of cyber extortion, seeking patterns and anomalies that might unravel the conspiracy. Each new discovery only deepened my resolve and fear in equal measure. I realized that the stakes were not just personal. They extended to a shadowy world where information was power and loyalty was a currency far more dangerous than money. In the midst of this chaos, a turning point emerged. I uncovered hints of a high-profile meeting scheduled in secret, an event that promised to bring together the key players of this underground world. If I could attend, perhaps I could glean the information needed to finally break free of Bradley's grasp and expose the network. The risk was monumental, but it was a risk I had to take. My future, my freedom, depended on it. As I prepared for this perilous step, a storm of determination and fear surged within me. The line between victim and conspirator had blurred, and every decision now carried the weight of potential ruin. The unfolding drama was a relentless reminder that in the world of secrets and betrayal, the truth is often the most dangerous weapon of all. In the weeks that followed, the pieces of the dangerous puzzle finally began to fall into place. The high-profile meeting Mark had mentioned turned out to be a clandestine gathering in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a meeting where the dark underbelly of digital extortion, corruption, and manipulation would be exposed. I knew that attending this event was my only chance to sever Bradley's hold over my life and bring down the network that had invaded my world. Under cover of darkness, I arrived at the warehouse. The building was eerily silent, its broken windows and peeling paint hinting at long-forgotten secrets. Inside, I blended with the shadows, my heart pounding as I listened for any indication of the conspirators' presence. Every step I took was calculated, every whispered conversation a potential clue. I clutched a small recorder and my phone, my only tools in this dangerous game. As the meeting commenced, voices emerged from a dimly lit room, discussing plans to manipulate influential figures and extort millions from those who dared to cross them. I recorded every detail, each word etching the truth into my memory. Then, unexpectedly, Bradley's voice cut through the murmurs. He was there unmistakably, his tone authoritative as he negotiated alliances and future favors. In that moment, my blood turned cold. The man I had once trusted had become an integral part of this sinister web. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I knew I had to act quickly. I covertly contacted Mark, who had been monitoring my progress. Together, we devised a plan to gather enough evidence to dismantle the network and expose Bradley's betrayal. Our next steps involved a risky race against time, collaborating with a discreet team of cybersecurity experts and investigative journalists who had long suspected the existence of this underground organization. The day of reckoning arrived with a storm that matched the turmoil inside me. Armed with the recordings, documents, and digital trails we'd meticulously compiled, Mark and I met with the team in a secure location. Every piece of evidence pointed to a widespread conspiracy, implicating not only Bradley but several high-ranking individuals who profited from secrecy and manipulation. The decision was made. The information would be released to the authorities and the press simultaneously, leaving no room for cover-ups. I arranged one final meeting with Bradley, a confrontation that would serve as my declaration of independence. In a deserted parking garage under flickering lights, I confronted him. His expression was unreadable as I laid out the evidence. "You thought I would remain silent," I said, voice trembling yet determined, "but the truth always finds its way into the light." Bradley's eyes narrowed as he responded coolly, "You have no idea what you're dealing with." But his confident tone faltered under the weight of undeniable proof. The confrontation escalated quickly. With the evidence now in the hands of law enforcement and the media, Bradley's calculated control began to crumble. He attempted to dismiss my accusations, but it was too late. The network's secrets were out, and the ensuing scandal would reverberate for months. In that moment, I realized that while I had paid a heavy price for my safety, I was finally reclaiming my identity. In the aftermath, Bradley and his associates were arrested. The scandal dominated headlines, and the public began to see through the carefully constructed facade of power and influence. For the first time in months, I felt the oppressive weight lift, replaced by a cautious optimism. I had survived the ordeal, and despite the scars, I was determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. Yet, the journey left me with a lasting lesson. Trust is both a precious gift and a dangerous liability. The darkness that once threatened to consume me had been forced into the light, and I vowed never again to be a pawn in someone else's game. As I stepped forward into a future marked by resilience and hard-won freedom, I knew that the path to redemption was never easy, but it was mine to walk. And with that, I closed the chapter on a nightmarish chapter of my life, determined to rebuild, stronger and wiser than before.